These are the Salice F70 undermount drawer slides. And in this video, I'm going to demonstrate a really fast, simple drawer box construction. And then I'm going to show you exactly how you install these undermount drawer slides. Let me start by giving you a quick breakdown of the materials. You see multiple pieces here that have already been cut. This right here is going to be the back. This right here is going to be the front. And you will see that the back is only cut to where the groove is. I'll talk about the grooves in a second. These two pieces right here are the sides, so groove, groove, groove. They're all there to accept this panel. The material that I'm using is 12mm Baltic birch. I like that on my drawer boxes, mainly because I like the exposed look of the plies. Now, a couple of measurements to note. The length of the sides is always going to match what your drawer box is. So in this case, these are 21-inch or 533 millimeters. So I know very quickly that my sides are going to be that length. Your fronts and backs are the opening of your cabinet minus 42 millimeters. And that's how you get the measurement for the fronts and backs. These grooves were cut on a router table using a router bit, and I basically just crept up until I made sure that I had a really nice fit that I was looking for with my bottom panel. And the depth is 6 millimeters. So this is exactly 12 millimeters thick. I'm going half the thickness, which is something I do pretty standard. So to start this off, I'm going to start with a side and the front. I've got my groove down towards the table, and I'm using my table as the reference surface just to make sure that everything comes together nice and tight. Couple other things. I'm going to clamp this because I am using pocket holes. I am using the Castle 110 pocket hole cutter. These don't shift around as much, but it's still a good practice when you're using pocket screws if you want everything to line up to clamp it down. So that's what I will be doing. And I also want to highlight that I am not using glue for this drawer box. Why would I not be using glue? Well, you absolutely can if you want to, but I just want to demonstrate that, you know, this joint and this drawer box construction with the screws going into the side, which is going to allow that pressure as you're pulling in and out, this is plenty strong enough for most applications. So just to prove that, I'm comfortable. This is for my own kitchen island, so that's what I'm going to do. And all I'm doing there is I'm just tapping this till where it's perfectly flush. I mean, absolutely perfectly flush. Tighten it down. Go ahead and apply my 2 pocket screws here and drive those home. Now that those are screwed in nice and flush, I can switch and do the same thing on the other side. Next, I'll be putting the bottom panel inside of the drawer. And one thing I want to highlight is I like my grain to move across the drawer when you open it up. And so that is how I've cut the panels here. I would also like to highlight that I have sanded all of these pieces before assembling it, because that way when it's assembled I can spray it and not have to worry about trying to get into tight corners to get all of my sanding done. So this is just going to slide right into the grooves all the way down. I check here, I'm nice and flush. Now I can go ahead and put this so the bottom is actually facing upward, and now I'll put the back piece on. With the back, I'm basically following the same steps that I took before, and I'm just going to slide this in there, and at this point I still have the ability to move the sides out a little bit. So I'm going to get this pretty close to being flush, and we're going to get this clamped together. Everything's flush, everything's clamped together, drive the screws home. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to attach the bottom to this back stretcher using some screws, which I'll show you in just a moment. But there's a couple ways that you can make drawer boxes for undermount drawer slides. One requires you to cut a notch in the back, or if you do like I just did, I now have a flat bottom all the way across the back, and the reason for that is because the drawer slide needs to sit in this opening, which is why you would cut a notch. Now for this assembly, we don't need to worry about a notch. We just create the box and we could assemble everything. To attach this, I'm only going to do it in 3 sections. I like to do it in the middle and then more out towards the ends, but not all the way to the ends. Next, just drive in these small screws. And we now have a solid connection and a very strong drawer. Now the assembly of the drawer box itself is not necessarily universal to this particular set of drawer slides. It's just a quick, no-nonsense way to put together a drawer box. But there are 2 very, very specific things that we need to do for undermount drawer slides, and specifically these. And the first one is we need to drill a hole back here for the locating pin. This is the locating pin. Now the good news is the location of that hole for this locating pin is pretty much universal among most of the leading undermount drawer slide brands. And the way that we do that is either through the measurements that are in the book, which I'm going to go over all of the measurements for these here momentarily, but you can also use something like this. This is just a Rockler undermount drilling guide, and this will allow you to perfectly locate where you need to drill that locating hole. And as you can see, now we have our locating hole, and we do the same thing to the other side. The second part that is specific to undermount drawer slides is the installation of the clips, which you can see here. While they do look the same, they are different. One is for the right side, one is for the left side, and those typically can be indicated on the part. And with the Salice, you can see right here right, and you can see right here left. Now just remember, when you're looking at the drawer box, it's going to be the opposite of that, because this is actually the right side when it's flipped up the right way. An easy way to remember is these brackets, these points, need to go into the corner just like this. Now there are a couple different mounting options. I can mount it through some screws that are right here that will go into this front piece. Myself, I'm going to mount directly into the bottom right there in one of those 3 holes. And remember, all the way to the corner, and then I'm just going to hold it tight in place, and I'm going to drive in my first screw. I'm not pre-drilling or anything for these. The screws that I'm using are just standard 5/8 inch cabinet screws that you would use for any hinge or any drawer slide. Let me bring you in closer for this one so you can see the layout of the holes better. The construction of the drawer is complete now. We can really just take this and set it off to the side. The next thing that needs to happen is we need to install the slide into the cabinet box. Let me bring you in closer to show you exactly what we have with this cabinet. What you're looking at right now is one of the side panels for this cabinet box, and this right here, the edge banded portion, is the front of the cabinet. I have my first row of holes and I have a back row of holes. Now to highlight something, I don't do a 3rd screw in the drawer slides usually, just because I don't really find it to be that necessary. So the only thing that I'm concerning myself with is the front row and the back row, and if I wanted to add one later after they're installed, it's very easy to do once they're in the cabinet. I want to talk about a couple of measurements, the first being 37 millimeters. So the center line of this row is 37 millimeters from the front. Now, that is pretty universal among any slides that you are going to use, that at least one of the hole locations will line up with 37 millimeters. The back row that I'm using is completely dependent on the slide that you are using, and you can find this information in the manual online or with whatever instructions your slides come with. But in this case, I knew that my back row needed to be 421 millimeters from the front edge. So I bored all of these holes prior to even getting my drawer slides because I knew what the measurements were. And then that way, when I get them, all I have to do is install them. One other thing that I would like to add is that you see that I have a variety of holes here, and you might be wondering, well, how many drawers are you putting in here? And the answer to that is I'm only putting 3 drawers in here. However, by just taking the time to plunge all of these out, it gives you the ability to adjust if needed during the install, or if you decide to change your cabinet drawer box size, or you want to add a drawer, it's very easy to do, and all of this will be inside of the cabinet where it'll never be seen. I want to take a couple of minutes to show you where you can find this information. So again, I said I was using Salice F70 slides for this new kitchen island that I'm building. And they, just like Bloom and other companies, do in fact have a manual that shows the different measurements. Now here what I want to show you is, let's go exactly with the 21 inch that I am using. So these are 533 millimeters, and this is where I found the information that I needed. So right here you can see from the front edge of the cabinet all the way to this particular hole, it's 421. The other thing that you'll notice is that from the front edge of the cabinet till this hole right here, I'm just going up here because it's easier for you to see, 37 millimeters. So it is a perfect intersect with this hole right here at 37 millimeters back, and that's including a 4 millimeter setback that is on these slides, meaning that the front edge of the slide is not perfectly flush with the cabinet. It does in fact sit a little bit back. But if you plunge that first hole at 37 and you use that hole right here to mount it, then it's automatically going to give you that setback. Now, as we go through this catalog, you will see some things that I already had talked about, and that is the locating pin location for this rear hook. It has the measurements right here. This is the notch that I was referring to, and it actually tells you exactly the max and minimums that these things need to be cut. We obviously took that out of the equation completely because we have a flat bottom all the way across. And then right here is where it breaks down the length of your sides, the fronts, the backs, and you can see here X minus 42. That's how you get the measurement for the fronts and backs, and X being the opening of your cabinet, the space for that. So if that was 1,000, it would be 1,000 minus 42, and that's how big this piece is going to be across. And finally, one other thing to make sure that you pay attention to is for this particular runner, I have a range of 12 millimeter or ½ inch all the way to 16 millimeter or 5/8 for drawer thickness material. Now, the reason why there is a cap on that is because this distance from here to here, that side panel actually fits in this groove. So you couldn't use these slides and 3/4 inch drawer material. You would have to get a different set of slides. Hopefully that makes sense. When installing slides, especially multiple sets of slides, I really enjoy actually laying the cabinet on its side because it makes the install really easy because you're not fighting with gravity. So once I have my holes lined up, I almost always start on the front. And the reason for that is because these will auto center, and I always want to get that front one nice because I want to make sure that setback is correct. Once that's in there, I can come back to the back, make sure that everything's lined up, and drive it in. And now my slide is installed on one side. I can flip this over and install the other one. Now that both the slides are installed, here's the absolute best part of using undermount drawer slides, and that is the fact that the installation process is so easy. I just clip them in and it's done. But as with other undermount drawer slides, these orange levers right here is actually going to be what unlocks the drawer box from the slide. And then we do have some adjustability built into these clips. And you'll notice that with this particular clip, we have some adjustability here, and we have an adjustability wheel here. And basically what these are going to do on both sides, this is going to allow you to move the drawer box left and right. So after you put your drawer fronts on, if you need to work on your reveals a little bit, you have some adjustability there. But we also have the adjustability on this wheel to make the cabinet drawer go in or out, right? So we do have some movement forward and backwards as well with these clips. So if you're looking to install or find a new undermount drawer slide to use, an alternative, the Salice F70, this is how you install it. these are the measurements, and this is a simple drawer box construction method. Thanks for watching.